And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what? China. All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China.
Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
The lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. They want us to sell our souls to barter profit. Like God's property, it's hard to market. So we steady to aim, keep your eyes on target. Cause when you got to drive, yeah, they'd rather you park it. But I don't valet, you ain't getting these keys. I'm keeping closed hands, I'm on bended knee. I'm just a reflection, dealing with 8 sections. Art mixed with life, you can feel the convection. Your lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said
The same people that have stripped us of our identity and labeled us as a color have told us what it means to be black.
Here's a chart that summarizes vowel class and length. And you can see across the top the 3 classes, ah, e, and oo. And then down the side the 4 lengths, long, medium, short, and very short. So let's just go over this chart. We'll start with the ah class vowels. The long vowel is cholam vav, and you'll recall that this says O as in snow. Now you might wonder why an O vowel is in the ah class, and this is because of historical considerations. Originally there was no O sound in Hebrew.
The same people that have stripped us of our identity and labeled us as a color have told us what it means to be black.
Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you.
Want to say peace and blessings, family. I know that this is a unscheduled live, another one of my unscheduled lives. I know I've been going, it's probably my 4th or 5th night in a row, but I just wanted to close out this series with what I've been teaching on and dealing with our heritage, dealing with Easter, dealing with the deception. And last night, and I encourage you guys, go back over part 1. This is going to piggyback off of part 1, Stolen Hope and Messiah. They stole our heritage. And so tonight, I want to just go right into it. That's why I didn't do a lengthy intro like I normally do. But I wanted to get into showing you some things that many of our brothers and sisters are scared, afraid to teach, especially when it comes to the language. Many of them know some of the information I'm going to share with you that are teaching Hebrew and actually teaching Israeli language, but choose not to teach the truth. And I'm going to give you sources because I know some of you guys are asking, what's the name of the Most High? Is it Yahuwah? Is it Yahuwah? Is it Yahweh? And I'm going to answer some of that tonight. I'm not going to do the full lesson, the Hebrew lesson that I give when I do an introduction to Hebrew in the class I teach. And for those that want to learn Hebrew and also that full presentation, I'm going to do it on the Patreon account. I'm going to do that this weekend. So I'll put the schedule inside there, and I encourage you guys to subscribe to the Patreon account. I'm not one of those that have all kinds of tiers, and no, it's if you want to just put the bare minimum that Patreon requires, is that's $1. Feel free to do so. I'm not in it for the money. The Most High allowed me to be blessed financially to earn a decent income to whereas though I don't have to feel pressure to, uh, nickel and dime to people. And for me, there's a lot of nickel and diming when it comes to people that are teaching the biblical, supposed to be teaching this truth, teaching the Bible. And it's not just in this awakening, it's with anyone that is teaching the Bible. And you guys know what I mean. You guys have been there. You guys have been in church, whereas though every time you turn around, they have something that's going to pull money out of your pocket, whether it's a anniversary, whether it's just a program, having other assemblies to join them just for the sole purpose of raising money, to try to get additional money to cover whatever they feel they need to cover. So they have all kinds of programs that's supposed to be for the people, but realistically, it's not. It's all about an agenda that's connected with that, associated with that. So I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it for the reward, the ultimate reward from the Most High. When He look at me, I want Him to say, in the day of judgment, well done, my faithful servant. That I've been faithful of a little, and He's going to bless me with more. And that's all of our desire should be, just doing the thing of the will of the Father. And so I'm not in it for the money. And if you guys notice, I don't do a lot of, actually, I don't do any of that solicitation and anything. And then our services, those that have really came and partook in some of our services, they'll tell you we don't even we don't have a prayer. I mean, not prayer line, but an offering line. We don't do any of those things. We don't. We teach the proper application of offering and sowing and tithes and offering and all those things, but we don't beat the people in the head with that, because I'm a firm believer that it's not my responsibility to micromanage your obligations to the Most High. Whatever you are obligated to give to the Most High, that's between you and the Most High. That has nothing to do with me, because you have some places that will literally require that their ministers, their staffs, to show them their pay stubs. Some places even require that from their members, and they calculate how much tithe they should be giving for that entire year. And if you don't give, you will get a letter to inquire about why you're not giving tithes, and then eventually they will let you go from that ministry if you don't. I'm going to say for their give monies to them. So I'm not caught up in all of that stuff, family. If you choose to want to bless this ministry, bless the works that I am doing here, feel free to do so, but don't feel like you're pressured to doing it. All right. I want to say peace and blessings. Give a couple of shout outs here, since I know it's not going to be as many people on here tonight because it's the first day of the week for many, far as in terms of work. But I'm off, so I'm up late, so I decided to do this. So I want to say peace and blessings to Apostle Curtis. Really appreciate fellowshipping with you over the Shabbat, the celebration of feast days. And for those that are honoring the feast days, remember you're still in the week of celebration. So you're still in that period of not eating anything that has leaven within it. So, but anyway, not getting into all of that. So I want to say peace and blessings to you, Apostle. My sister, Ashonda at large. I want to say peace and blessings to you, my sister. Really appreciate all what you are doing and continue to do. It's been a tremendous blessing to this awakening. And family, if you're not subscribed to her channel, go to her channel. Go to her channel. She's doing an incredible work for Yah's people. So just to cover a couple of more people here, Sister Yvette, I want to say peace and blessings to you. Really appreciate you and all that you are doing and continue to do for the kingdom of the Most High. Sister Angela, peace and blessings to you. Amiya, Aniyeki, I want to say peace and blessings to you as well. Faye, I want to say peace and blessings to you. Diamond, love, in other words, Sister Diamond, want to say peace and blessings to you. Let's see here. I think this is what is it? Professor Eight of Yah. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that. Professor or proof it. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it. But peace and blessings to you. Don't mean to butcher your name, like the old school would say. Charge it to my head and not to my heart. Appreciate you, my brother. Danielle as well. Shalom to you. Get a couple more in and we'll get right into it. Ari Lynn, want to say peace and blessings to you. And Sharon D, peace and blessings to you. Lizelle Lee, peace and blessings to you. All right. And we're just going to get right into it, family. And I really appreciate you guys for tuning in tonight. And Faye, thank you for being a first time subscriber and that you're here to learn the truth. And I encourage you, if this is your first time on this channel, go to the playlist that says Foundation, the foundational playlist. Go there is some teachings that I've covered that really deals with the basics. You know, I deal with the resurrection. I deal with the virgin birth. You know, a lot of non-Messianics as well as so-called Messianic Israelites are teaching and teaching against the virgin birth. And I give proper clarity there. So it's a lot of foundational videos. There's about 20 of them there. I encourage you to go to that playlist and just really start getting full with the information that's there. Some great teachings there. And I'm not saying it because I taught them, but it is some great information there. So family, let's show some love for Faye, first time subscriber and here to learn the truth. So let's show some love for Faye. Really appreciate you. All right. So family, let's go and get into it. I know it's late, so I don't want to keep you longer than what's necessary for this lesson. And so what we're going to do, we're going to kind of overlap, double back a little bit on what we left off at in the last lesson, the one that I did last night. And we're just going to piggyback off of that, right? This is dealing with that name, God, that word God, which from a Proto-Indo-European language is actually Got, which refers to the Norse deities. And so this word God, you know, the question is, are there any Semitic or Shemitic or references to the word God, right? We know that we have God from one of the tribes, but are there any other languages, other Shemitic languages that use this word or the sound of this word? And what is it in reference to? So we're going to answer that question. And so when we look at God from the Ernest Klein, a comprehensive etymological dictionary of the Hebrew language, this is the definition of God, right? And it says this, right? Entry number one, it means good fortune, luck. Then it says number two, name of the god, fortune, right? God. Then it goes on to say, when it says often occurring in Phoenician, I think this is Aramaic, I believe, Aramaic, but it says inscriptions and as an element in many Phoenician, Aramaic private names. All right. So this is not from a perspective of our Most High. This is not our Elohim, right? This is a similar word, God, G-A-D. Someone say Gad, but it's not that sound did not exist. That vowel sound did not exist in the ancient languages. So in the Phoenician, in Aramaic, God is, as you see, good luck. It says good fortune, luck, but also the name of a god, the god fortune. And we'll see this god fortune in many, in the, a couple other belief systems, like when you deal with Hinduism and so forth. And we'll touch on that real quick. So when we go to the Hebrew and Chaldean lexicon of the Old Testament scriptures, this is a great source to get. These two sources that I pulled up here, for those that are learning Hebrew, these are some great sources here. But notice what it says here. Here's the word God, right? It says fortune with art, especially the divinity of fortune. Notice what it says, the divinity of fortune, worshipped by the Babylonians and by the Israelites that was exiled among them. So this is a Babylonian deity, as it's highlighting here. Elsewhere called Baal, an example, the planet Jupiter, regarded in all the East as the giver of good fortune. So this has nothing to do with, from our Dabar HaKodesh, our holy word. This has nothing to do with being used interchangeably with our Most High, with Yahuwah Allahayim. All right, so I want to make that clear, right? And as you see here again, it says planet Venus called in the East, right? The lesser good fortune. It says see under this word, and it says, but it goes and says, yeah, that's all I want to highlight here. I'm not going to go beyond that. So, who is the divinity of fortune? And you guys remember this from last night, just doing an overlap, just kind of a refresher. This is the god or goddess fortune. That's why you see this wheel, like the wheel of fortune, right? Also, you see the roulette, the roulette table, right? You see the lottery. They have this wheel because of it deals with good luck. So this has nothing to do with Yah. I want to make that clear. Has nothing to do with Yah. Everything to do with paganism. So fortune, the god or Roman triple goddess of fate, had many fortune titles. And this just gives some of the titles here. When we see here, good and bad fate, right? Good and bad fate. Goes on to say, Fortuna Augusti was the foundation of the emperor's right to rule. Romans swore by the emperor's personal fortuna, who governed his soul. Okay, but then it goes on to say, where I just want to get to something here. Let me see here. This is just more information on this mythology, mysticism of this goddess, right? It goes on to say the great mother turning the celestial wheel of the stars, and also the karmic wheel of fate, like we were just spoke of, dealing with the wheel of fortune. All right. And it goes on to say here, on the Orphic Bowl of the 5th century AD, he appeared next to her. This is dealing with another deity, not getting into all of that, in her guise of the Lord of Death, halfway around the circle at the point of midnight. But it goes on to say here, the goddess favors ones went to her paradise in the far west, often called the Fortunate Isles, on the goddess magic wheel of time. This is where you get into, as we dealt with the word or the pronunciation of God from a Shemitic perspective, but also from a Proto-Indo-European perspective, right? So when we deal with the Greeks, when we deal with the Norse, when we deal with these different belief systems, this is nothing to do with our Most High whatsoever. You will not see the usage of this inside our ancient texts. So on the goddess's magic wheel of time, odd numbers were sacred to her. This is why you see the odd numbers in one color, the even numbers in another color, right? So it says on the goddess's magic wheel of time, odd numbers were sacred to her, even numbers to her consort. Roman religious festivals were scheduled for the odd number female days because they were supposed to be more propitious than male days. All right. So again, this is dealing with that wheel of fortune, luck, as we just dealt with God from a Shemitic perspective. Fortuna became patroness of gamblers when her fate wheel was secularized as the carnival wheel of fortune, and she was renamed Lady Luck. Okay. All right. So just wanted to highlight that a little bit, give you some clarity on that. But I want to also touch on this a little bit from the Catholic Encyclopedia, what they say about the word Lord and what they say about God, right? But primarily, I want to highlight God, and because they're going to further confirm what I just highlighted here, right? Etymology of the word God, as you see, Anglo and the Saxons, God, German Gott, Gott, akin to Persian Khoda, Hindu Khuda. God can variously be defined as, and this is where we get into generalization, right? Ambiguity, right? This is where uh, they start inserting and interpolating different languages, even our understanding of our Most High, our Supreme Being within the Holy Text, within our heritage, Yahuwah, the Father, right? Yahweh Elohim. Some of you guys would say Elohim, but I'm going to give some clarity on that as we progress in this lesson. So it says the proper name of the one supreme and infinite personal being, the creator, ruler of the universe, right? Uni, the Capitoline triad, verse, the doctrine of uni, to whom man owes obedience and worship. The common or generic, notice what it says, common or generic name of the several supposed beings, common or generic. Generic is, and common is in universal. All are interchangeable with the word Catholic. That's what Catholic means. It means universal. It means generic. It means common. To whom in the polytheistic religions, divine attributes are ascribed and divine worship rendered. It goes on to say the name sometimes applied to an idol. Let me say it again. The name sometimes applied to an idol as the image or dwelling place of a god, right? The root meaning of the name, and it gives us references from Gothic, Sanskrit. In other words, to invoke or to sacrifice. And the Most High said, we are not to summon, we are not to call on any other deities. So when you use that word God, that is not in the Hebrew lexicon. You will not find that word in the ancient literature, the ancient Hebrew. As I just pointed out, that points to ultimately a goddess of fortune. All right. So he tells us not to invoke. That's dealing with charms, right? In other words, canary, the spirit of the canary, sings songs of that points to other deities. And it says here, from the different Indo-Germanic roots, which is the branch of the Proto-Indo-European language, which in a nutshell, the language of Japheth, right? It says to shine, give light, to implore. Okay. So all of which are generic names. Notice what it says, all of which are generic names. The Most High is not generic. That's why I say God is a generic name. God, especially when we're dealing with the English language, that is part of the branch of the German language, which ultimately is the language of the English, of the descendants of Japheth, the Europeans, as well as many of like the Turkish people and all of that. That still falls up under the Proto-Indo-European language and other names of pagan deities. All right. So it says, and etc. Although scholars are not agreed on the point, the root meaning most probably is strong or mighty one. So this is now when you get into what is called assumptions. Okay, so this is what I mean by the Proto-Indo-European language. See, when I did the research of our identity, see, most of our brothers and sisters, they would go to a geographical perspective. There's more to understanding or literally researching that we the people of the book. Start with the languages. Language would tell you so much. That's why the three pillars of what constitutes a nation, right, that defines a nation is land, family, and tongues. You can confirm this with Genesis chapter 10. All right, I see a question here as I progress here, Pastor let's see here. Should I take the name Jesus out of my vocabulary, or is it okay? I've always been conflicted with this. Well, I'm going to say this, right? Right now, you really, I would say you're learning right now. And I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong if you use Jesus. I know that Jesus is a transliteration of transliteration of transliterations, right? And I did a lesson on that, and I'll post it in the chat. Or any of the moderators, if you can go into my video timeline, and if you could get the one that I did with Zeus versus Jesus, and post that inside the chat, so that way Faye could go and watch it, because then I really give you proper clarity, because there's a lot of, unfortunately, misleading information out there by saying, when you say Jesus, it's referring to a pig. That is an absolute lie, right? And I actually show how that name is a transliteration of a transliteration. No, we know during that time they did not use the name Jesus, right? We know the letter J didn't exist at that time. We know even the sound Ja didn't exist in that time, because when you say Ja, that's still part of a Sephardic. When you start dealing with Ladino and all of that, that's still a sound that existed before the letter J came into play. But in Hebrew, no, you won't find that name. You won't find that name in the Greek. You'll see Iesus, right? But Iesus is a transliteration of Yeshua or Yahshua, right? And then when you go to the ancient Hebrew, you'll see Yahweh Shai. So if someone can get that and post it inside the chat, that'd be great for her. So I want to say this, as you progress, of course, I would recommend using the ancient name of the Messiah, the ancient name of the Most High in your prayers. I'm not saying you have to learn Hebrew and be a Hebrew scholar. No, if someone do something for me, blesses me, I want to know their name so I can bless them. And I take that same approach with the Most High. He did so much for me. And I know that Jesus is by the time we get to this language, it's English versus the ancient Hebrew. I want to go to what the ancient Hebrew says. So that way I can, for me, knowing that I am giving proper honor to him by calling him by his name, right? Same thing with Yah. If ultimately you could just say Yah. That's the short form of the Father's name. We'll touch on that a little bit tonight. All right. So I hope that helps you. And so again, family, this is what you see here when I say Proto-Indo-European, right? This is the tree of languages for, we could say, the language of Japheth. And you could really start looking at just the languages, start seeing what the origins of people, right? Especially when we deal with the language of Japheth, right? We see these four major trunks. Anatolian, we see Celto, Italo, Takarian, right? We see Balto, Slavo, Germanic, we see Ariano, Greco, Armenic, right? So, and when we see this one here, you see how it branches to the Greek, you see Doric, you see Ionic, you see some of the other languages here. But notice how this branches off and it goes into Armenio-Aryan. We see this branches off to this trunk right here, but then it goes into Indo-Iranian, right? Then we see Sanskrit, O-Iranian. So we see Hindi, right? So now we start to understand that the Hindus, or the Indians rather, they are actually part of that Proto-Indo-European. They are the descendants of Japheth, right? But when I was dealing with the Germanic language, Proto-Germanic language, you see how it breaks off into two: Northern Germanic, Western Germanic. If you stay on Northern Germanic, you'll see Scandinavia. You see a little side here, Gothic, right, which is still part of the Germanic language, right? A trunk of languages. You see Danish, Swedish, Icelandic, Norwegian, right? So that's still part of what? Scandinavian language, ultimately Northern Germanic. But when we look at the Western Germanic, notice what you see here: English, Frisian, High German, Low German, Dutch, Flemish. So you see English is part of the Western Germanic languages. You have Old English, Modern English, or Middle English, right? So that's still part of the Germanic language. And so when you're dealing with the word "got," that word "got," G-O-T-T, which transliterates now to saying God, it comes from this Germanic tree of trunk of languages, which points to their religion, which is the Norse. All right. So I just wanted to just show you this tree of languages here. And like I said, so much you can learn off of this alone. So this is the Proto-Indo-European tree of languages. All right. So is the confusing or this confusing word God the name of the Most High of Israel? Now, I answered the question, but I'm going to answer it now. Is this confusing word God the name of the Most High of Israel? Now, this is coming from the Roman private guides, right? Revealing God's name, a secret hidden for centuries by the Vatican, right? It says this: in 2017, Pope Francis felt that the Vatican needed to create a connection with the public, and he realized the need for deeper transparency. Excuse me. This led to his request to unseal a set of ancient scrolls from Vatican secret archives, scrolls that had been secretly concealed from the public for centuries, as it often happens with texts or art deemed threatening or too revealing by the church. Over the centuries, the church has destroyed many art pieces. And this is when you start, if you study the Russian icons, you'll see how they had a major influence of changing, like the Russian icons, for example, from looking like dark melanated people to being Caucasian. And you can get the information out of that book that the Catholic Church made a strong push to change those pictures to make them into Caucasian. That's why the heads are shaped funny, because they covering up froze, they covering up locks. All right. So over the centuries, the church has destroyed many art pieces, books, and ancient texts to protect its legacy. But that is a story I will share another time, right? And this is this is RomePrivateGuides.com. So they deal with a lot of travel. As you can see, this is their website, right? I came across this years ago, right? But anyway, but it says here, for now, let's get back to a text that will surely fascinate you with its implications, as it will have you wonder about the motivations to keep it hidden, as well as about its meaning. The discovery of the scrolls in question dates back to 70 AD, when the Romans sieged the Temple of Jerusalem, previously hidden from the knowledge of the church for centuries. These hidden scrolls were obtained in 463 AD and subsequently banned by Pope Hilarius for a very important reason. He aimed to keep the true name of God hidden from the people and had it stricken from all official literature. The scrolls contained the true name of God as communicated to Moses in a censored part of Exodus 3:14. Ever since, the true name of God has been passed down from pope to pope as privileged secret knowledge and kept hidden from laymen until Pope Francis decided to put an end to the double life the Vatican was leading by revealing the secret in 2017. In Exodus 3:14, appearing before Moses as a burning bush, God reveals his name, referring to himself in Hebrew tongues as Yahweh. And I'm going to give you clarity with that ancient Hebrew is not Yahweh, right? Just even the word structure, because number one, ancient Hebrew is consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant. Yahweh is not spelled that way. We have consonant, right? Vowel, right? Consonant, Yah, right? We had Yah, right? Consonant, right? Vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel, right? So anyway, but this just breaks the structure of the consonant vowel structure, because we should see right now we see consonant vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant. We should see a vowel here. That'll be consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant. All right. But anyway, but we'll touch on, we're not going to go too deep in that portion of it as we progress here, but that's how it should read as far as the word structure. dealing with ancient Hebrew. Because here, when you say Yah, that's his short name. Hawa means exist, to exist. So Yahuwah means he exists, which translates to I am who I am. Okay. The church decided that the name needed to be replaced with the words God and Lord. And so Yahweh was stricken from all the passages, and the scrolls were kept in the apostolic archives of the Vatican and hidden from public knowledge, as the name of the God was to be known by the Pope only. But as you see here, God and Lord, right? In your Bibles, that's what you see, God and Lord. You don't see the Most High name. You rarely see the Most High name inside the scriptures. You'll see it in Exodus. You'll see it once in Exodus, but you really don't see. But it'll say Jehovah, right? And you'll also see it in the 68 book of Psalms, where you'll see Yah, the short forms. Yours to say Jah. Okay, so here's some facts, some additional facts, because family, I'm telling you, you'd be surprised on a lot of the stuff that, in a nutshell, that are not biblical, right? And I'm going to share with you something else that is not biblical, right? So I want to share with you the facts about what is called the New Testament, and I want you to show you just the delusions that we have been up under. You know, the word New Testament, that's not biblical. That's not what the ancient Israelites even stress. But I'm going to show you when and who and the agenda behind it. All right. So let's go ahead and get into it. Here we go. Here we go. So this is coming from New World Encyclopedia. And I'm going to drop this link inside the comment section, because I know you guys want to know, hey, Pastor, can we get the links that you shared? So let me share this to you guys, being that you guys are up here, up late with me, and I appreciate you guys. Let's see here. Let me move some of this stuff up so I can grab this link here. And I'm going to drop it in the comment section. You know, I appreciate you guys for being here late night with me. And I encourage you guys to go back over yesterday's lesson, go back over this lesson, and just take your time and go in. All right. So here we go. Take your time and go back over it. All right. So let's go ahead and deal with this, the New Testament. Okay. Let's deal with it. And you can, there's the link inside the comment section if you want to take a look at what, vet what I am saying, confirm what I'm pointing out to you. So the New Testament, the term New Testament came into use in the 2nd century during a controversy among Christians over whether or not the Hebrew Bible should be included with the Christian writings as sacred scripture. Y'all see this here, family? And I hope y'all pay attention to this. I hope you guys pay attention to this. Man, they were really busy. Those Catholics, man, they were busy. Those non-blood descendants of Israel, they was really busy to establish their own religion, hijack an heritage that was never theirs, hijack a culture, hijack a heritage of another people, and place it into their hands. And they began to modify it and created this system called Christianity or Catholicism or whatever you want to call it. So again, the term New Testament came into use in the 2nd century. What? During a controversy among Christians over whether or not the Hebrew Bible should be included with the Christian writings as sacred scripture. What? So they were debating whether or not to include what is called the law and the prophets into their canonization of their text. What? Without the law and the prophets, which they called the Old Testament, this is why they labeled it the Old, truth be told, is so that way human nature, when you hear the word old, outdated. Right. So but they had to include it because it'll give the impression that Christianity or this belief system has been around before the antiquities. It's always been around. That is an old belief system. When realistically, it's only Islam was created in the 5th century. When we really get into Christianity, we could go back to the 2nd century, really, to be honest with you. It's the 2nd century. So it's only like 2 or 3 centuries older than Islam. But they had to include what they call the Old Testament to it. So it gives these, it gives this impression that it's old. It's an older belief system. Okay, so it says here, some other works which were widely read by early churches were excluded from the New Testament and regulated to the collections known as the Apostolic Fathers. In other words, generally considered Orthodox. And the New Testament Apocrypha, including both Orthodox and heretical works. All right, so who was the first person? Who was the first to use and coin the phrase New Testament? I'm glad you guys asked. Who coined this phrase? Well, the term New Testament is a translation from the Latin Novum Testamentum, first coined by the 2nd century Christian writer Tertullian. Tertullian was the one that coined the term New Testament. He also was the one that coined and used the term Trinity or Trinitius. He was the one, and he was grew up in paganism. So first coined the 2nd century Christian writer Tertullian. It is related to the concept expressed by the prophet Jeremiah, chapter 31, verse 33, that translates the English as New Covenant. And we're going to deal with that shortly. The time is coming, declares the Lord, we know it says Yahuwah, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. This is all about Israel. This has nothing to do with the church. Let me say that again. This has nothing to do with the church.
What?
All about Israel.
What?
And I'm going to show you that, give you proper clarity on that word new. Okay, so this concept of the new covenant is also discussed in the 8th chapter of the letter to the Hebrews, in which the old covenant is portrayed as inferior and even defective. When you highlight the transliteration of Hebrews chapter 8, verse 7, because really Hebrews is literally quoting Jeremiah. But notice, if you start understanding what Christianity and Catholicism teach, they are teaching that the old covenant is inferior. It is defective. Indeed, many Christians consider the old Christians, those that are the non-blood descendants of Israel, those are ones that are considered the old covenant with the, as you see here, the Jews, but we know they're referring to Israel, to be obsolete. So I want to give clarity on this word new, because I even hear a lot of some of the brews within the community will say, hey, the Most High is going to give us a new language. When I hear them say that, I can tell you they're incorrect, because they're not viewing the scriptures from a Hebraic school of thought. Right. So let's go ahead and deal with this word, this Hebrew word renew. Right. Because what is the name? What is the Hebrew word for renew? So we want to deal with the Hebrew word for renew. We're going to deal with the Hebrew word for new. So what is the dictionary definition of it? Notice what it says here. It's Kadash, Kadash, not Quadash. Some of you guys would say Kadesh, right? That's a whole nother story. But here is Kadash, right? This is the Kametz, which makes an ah sound. This is the Patak, which makes an ah sound. So to be Kadash. the sheen, because it had this nakuv, this dot to the right side of the letter. So that's why it's chadash. But notice what it means: to be new, to rebuild, to repair, right? To rebuild, to renew, repair, right? To be new, right? To be new. You can, or make a new, renew, repair. So now I got to go a little deeper with this to show you that when you see so-called new covenant, actually it's the renewed covenant, because you will see this word there. We know that the Most High, if he tore up the covenant, then that means that he broke his promise to Abraham. No, he didn't break the covenant. He renewed the covenant with the generations that went into uh, Israel and took the and embraced the promised land. But now he's repairing, restoring, renewing his relationship with the people, because in Jeremiah, many of them got taken and began to indulge in the Babylonian culture. And many of our people today, in this diaspora, are indulging in religious and belief systems that the Most High is saying, hey, I gotta pull away from you. So it's all about him restoring, not starting anew. He's restoring. But let me give you clarity here. So let's start with this word restoration from an etymological perspective. It says here, a means of healing or restoring, renewing of something lost. But it says, see, restore. So let's go to restore, right? Restoration means something renewing, or it means renewing or of something. Let me say that again. Restoration means renewing of something. But let's go to restore, because it told us to go to restore, and you're going to see something here. It says to build up again, repair, right? Rebuild, renew, make or be firm. Now let's go back to the Hebrew definition of this word, and you're going to see it reads almost the same. To be new, to rebuild, renew, repair. In other words, the Most High is doing what? Restoring the relationship, restoring the covenant to the offsprings of Abraham, because again, we went into sin. We broke the covenant. So he's renewing. So let's go back over to restore, and this is interchangeable with resurrection. So again, as we see here, to build up again, repair, rebuild, renew, and we see make or be firm. So restore means to build up again, chadash, repair, rebuild, renew. And then when we go to the key prefix here, right, this word forming element here, notice what means. And this is important here. It says back, right? Word forming element, back from, back to the original. Also again, anew, once more. See, to make anew. So it's taking you back. It's like restoring a chair, restoring a car. You're making it anew. Not brand new, you're making it anew. You restored it back to its original. But the key to the right? In order to you have to undo. In order to get back to the original place, you have to undo what took us away from that original place. As you see here, again, back, anew, against. So it's not the new covenant from a Hebraic school of thought, it's renewed covenant. And there's plenty of theologians in the church that use the term renewed covenant. All right. So I want to give clarity there. So it means getting back to the original place. You have to undo, family. You can't ask the Most High to restore you if you're not willing to give up. If you're not really willing to give up the things that got you out of the will of the Father. Let me say that again. If you want the Father to restore, right? Let's just say if you want your credit restored, that means you have to undo. You have to undo bad behaviors. You have to undo those bad ratings, those bad things that's on your credit scores or your credit report. But you have to change your behavior. You have to undo the behavior that got you that that bad credit score. Because if not, you're going to continue to have bad credit. So means getting back to the original place, family. Let me say that again. Means get back to the original place. Let me say it one more time, family. Means get back to the original place. So when people say the new covenant, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Give me the commandments of the new covenant. They can't tell you, or they may say, oh, to love everybody. That's not a new commandment. That's already there with the covenant. Oh, to love God. That's all part of the covenant. The covenant is the 10 commandments, or the 10 commandments is the words of the covenant. All right, so let's go ahead and continue with this, family. I just want to make sure we undo some stuff here. So who was the first to use and coin this phrase? As I highlighted, Tertullian. I didn't go into the details here. I just want to let you know you can look it up. But let's go to Romans chapter 1, verse 22 and 23. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. Aren't we seeing that right now? I'm still waiting for someone to come up with 3 days and 3 nights. How did they get 3 days and 3 nights out of a day and a half? I'm still waiting for that. There's all kinds of things that people are trying to do, like start the 3 days and 3 nights at the time that the Messiah was taken. No, that prophecy says that he was going to be in the grave 3 days and 3 nights, like Jonah was in the belly of the great fish. I'm gonna say whale or whatever. No, he was clear. He was going to be in that sepulcher for 3 days and 3 nights. Can't get around it. You're not going to get it right now. You are not going to get 3 days from a day and a half. But if you figure it out, hey guys, if you figure it out, hey, I will give from my own pocket. I'll put $1,000 in your hand right now. I'll put it in your Cash App. I'll put it whatever. If you can figure out the formula of how to take 3 days and 3 nights and fit it into a day and a half, right? Day and a half of the Messiah being in the grave. I'll drop that in your ministry. All right. And that's not gambling or anything. I'm going Elijah here, or Elisha rather. No, Elijah. When he called out Jezebel, or King Ahab and Jezebel and their priests about the water, the rain. All right. But anyway, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools and changed the glory of the uncorruptible Yahuwah into an image made like to corruptible man, and to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. Right? So I want you to understand, Apostle Paul is really highlighting what happened in Genesis chapter 6. Come on, family. We got so many that are professing to be wise, to so smart that they're now starting to sound like they're ignorant, like they're uneducated, and change the glory of the uncorruptible Yahuwah into an image made like to corruptible man, and to birds, and to four-footed beasts, and creeping things. So let's see what the word glory means. This is the ancient Hebrew pronunciation, kabod. Let's see what glory means. It says this here. It says, in a good sense, numerous, rich, honorable. And we see glory, glorified. All right. So glory, kabod, also simply means honor. It means reputation. It's interchangeable with the word sham. Because when we see sham, and I'm going to go to it here, right? The English word name, right? It's a transliteration of the ancient Hebrew word sham, right? So let's go to sham. Let's see what it says here. It says, mark or memorial of individuality. In other words, a literal name. But also, it's the bearer of the name, honor, authority, character, fame, and famous, renown, report. And when we look at the bottom of here of the in-depth definition, you see reputation, fame, glory. So it's a synonym, right? Name is a synonym of sham is a synonym of kabod, glory. So name sham means honor, authority, character, glory, reputation. So let's go back to Romans chapter 1. And let's go back here what it says. It says again, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, changed the glory of the uncorruptible Yahuwah into images made like to corruptible man. Now this getting into the Egyptian culture and some of the Babylonian cultures. But the Egyptian cultures up until, what's his name? Ptolemy, they were primarily using human bodies with animal faces. Wherefore Elohim also gave them up to uncleanness through the lust of their own flesh, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves. Right? Gave them up. Say, hey, you want to do what you want to do? The Most High said, I'm gonna give you 100% you uncut. That's what he did with them. So these people changed the glory, kabod, of the uncorruptible Elohim. When we go to Genesis chapter 4, verse 26, let's start with them corrupting his name, his literal name. Let me show you proof. Let's go to Genesis chapter 4, verse 26. Right? When you read it, it says in Seth, to him also was born a son, and he called his name Enos. Then began men to call upon the name of the Lord. Right? Studying ancient Hebrew, studying this text, it's like, wait a minute. I see this differently in ancient Hebrew. Even though we know that the men, the word Yahuwah, they were already calling on this name well before Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Because we look in here, we see Seth. It says, into Seth, to him also was born a son, and he called his name Enos. So during this time, then began men to call upon the name of the Lord. But actually in ancient Hebrew, you'll see Yahuwah, that's his name, not Lord. That's a Proto-Germanic word, a political position, like Lord of the House or Lord of Flatbush. So then began. But when I went into the ancient Hebrew, reading this from ancient Hebrew, I saw kal there. You also can get the word kalal. And I'm going to show you what this name means. Men to call, quara'ah, upon the name Sham, Hasham Yahuwah. That's what you would see in ancient Hebrew. But let's see what this word kal or kalal mean. Not halal, but kalal. Let's see what this name means. Let's look up what's transliterated to began. But let's see what it means in ancient Hebrew, and you'll get a better understanding of this word. Notice what it says. To bore, an example, to wound, dissolve, profane, to break. In other words, break one's word. So we see when it says that men began to call upon the name of the Most High, they're saying men at that time, they began to profane. They began to bore. They began to wound. They began to dissolve. But the key is they began to profane the Most High's literal name and the reputation behind his name, right? We see here to break, also defile. And in other words, eat as common things like sacrificing to pork, unclean foods. We see in the ark, the Most High, Noah already knew the difference between clean and unclean animals because they were separated like that in the ark. So we see here profane, cast as profane, profane self, prostitute. So they began to profane defile, pollute, desecrate the Most High's literal name and his reputation. So again, kal means to wound, it means profane, it means defile, it means pollute. So does this mean that man began to profane or wound the name Sham of Yah? Guess what? Yes. Right? When we go to Genesis 3:15, notice what this says here. And I want you to understand what a wound is. It says, and I will put enmity, ayabah, right? This is active hostility between thee and the woman, and between thy seed, Zara, and her seed, Zara. And it shall bruise, shall whop thy head, Ra'ah, or Ra'ash, or in the Israeli pronunciation, Resh. And thou shalt bruise, shall whop his heel, Akoba, or Akwaba. This is where you get the name Yakoba or Yakwaba, right? Heel grabber, right? Anyway, so we see here, bruise, right? So let's go and see what the definition of bruise here means. It says wound, injure. See, family, wound, you can bruise someone. You can, and I'm sure you guys felt it before. You had a pain, you had a bruise. You didn't see a mark, but you knew there was a pain in a certain area. That's a bruise. See, what began to happen and what we see today and what I'm proving to you, when you see Lord and you see God, that is bruises. Those are subtle wounds right there. Having us still call upon other deities, whether it's directly or indirectly, because I just proved God in the Proto-Indo-European language refers to Norse deities. But if we go to other Shemitic languages, it's referring to the goddess of fortune. Now, we do have a tribe named God, but it's not referring to a deity. It just means his name means fortune. But in other Shemitic languages like the Phoenicians, you will see that that name is pointing to a goddess of fortune. So that has nothing to do with our Most High. That has nothing to do with Yahuwah Elohim. All right. So bruise, shawap, means to break. It means to crush. It means to wound. So now let's deal with some corruptions of the short form of Yah, because we know Yah, as we see here, it says the short form. It says meaning the same, Jah, the Lord, most vehement. Right. But notice what we see here. We see it says here it's in the scriptures 48 times. And Jah is there one time. But guess what? It's not transliterated 48 times. It's only transliterated one time to the name Jah. But I'm going to show you, give you some scripture references, make a note, family. You're going to see that this short form is in more areas than what you can imagine. The short form of the Father's name, Yah, is common. The 68th book of Psalms, verse 4, this is what we already touched on. It says here, but let righteousness be glad. But notice, actually, I'm going to go to verse 4. Sing, Shayar, unto Elohim. Sing praises to his name. Exalt him that rideth upon the heavens. By his name, the translation says Jah, but we see Yah. How come we don't talk about this inside the church? How come they don't use Yah? Even if they say Yah instead of God, use Yah. But the problem is, if it's only in this one passage, the chances or the likeliness of someone coming across this is going to be slim to none. Because in the church, they focus on, as I just proved, that term New Testament. They didn't even want to include the law and the prophets, or what they deemed to be Old Testament, with the New Testament for the Christians. So they would not see this name here. All they would know is the transliterated name. All they would know is Iesus in the early centuries from the Greek. Isus, when we start getting into the Latin, Isus or Jesus. And then by the time you get to the English, Jesus. But you won't know Yah's name. You won't know the Messiah's true name. But you see Yah here. Let's give another passage. Exodus 15:2. Notice what it says here. The Lord Yah. In other words, Yah is my strength and my song, and he has become my salvation. Yahshua. And the transliteration of this is Yeshua, right? Because they'll make this into a vowel letter. Wait a minute. We see the Messiah's name all the way here. Anyway, so we see Yah's name, the short form. That's Exodus 15, verse 2. Verse 3 would tell you that not the Lord, in the ancient Hebrew, say Yahuwah is his name. Hasham, Yahuwah. All right, let's go to Isaiah chapter 2, verse 12, verse 2. Behold, Allah is my salvation. We still see that word again. Yahshua or Yahshua or Yeshua. The full name when you get into Joshua is Yahweh Shai. I will trust, right? Aman. I will trust and not be afraid for Yahweh, Yah. You see the Lord Jehovah, right? But actually it's Yahweh. Has his short name, has his full name, is my strength and my song. He also is become my salvation. But why don't we see Yah? They could have put Jehovah, since we've seen Jah in the 68th book of Psalms, verse 4. Why didn't they just put Jehovah? See, this is where we get into the readers like you and I. We're subjected to the translators. We are subjected to the translators. All right, so let's go further with this. Let's continue. So men began to profane Kal or Kalal, which means wound, the name of Yah. So let me give you some examples. Amen Ra, right? I'm sure you guys heard this before. If you say Amen Ra, that means that, or say amen, you're paying homage to Amen Ra. Well, actually, that's Amen Ra is not his actual name. His name in the Egyptian culture is Yamanu. Amen Ra is Roman, right? Here's another source. Matter of fact, I'm going to hit my mic, but let me go ahead and put this link inside the chat. See, family, these are the things. If you understood what I'm teaching here, if you take these things and run with it, even dealing with the conscious community, because this is one of their talking points. This is what they use to seduce people, pull people out of the way to following their foolishness. But let me put this here. I want to make sure you guys have this as a source so you could go back and review it later. So let me show you here. All right. I want to say peace and blessings to my brother Jay Highstyle. So I just put the link here. So what I'm sharing with you is right in front of you. It's in that link, which you can confirm. Notice what it says here. Egyptian Yamanu. Egyptian Yamanu. Right? When you say Amun, also spell Aman, and you notice where it says amen in the Greek. Amen in the Greek. So Aman is actually the proper pronunciation of the word amen. Amen is the Greek pronunciation, but Aman. But when we see here, Egyptian, Yamanu. But when you say Amun, also spell Aman, amen, that is Greek. But in Egyptian, the Egyptian culture, it's Yamanu. All right. The Egyptian moon god, Yah. Let's see how it's been corrupted, right? Moon god, Egyptian. Notice what this says here. And this is coming from this source, Encyclopedia of Gods, over 2,500 deities of the word. It says here, Yah may have been imported to Egypt, brought by Shemitic or immigrants. So it's telling us that the name Yah was brought into the Egyptian culture, but guess what they did to it? Notice what you see here, who is based off his profile on the Mesopotamian god Sin. So even seeing Mesopotamia, this name was being corrupted. He is mentioned largely from the 20th century BC onward and is depicted in human form, but can be represented by the falcon and ibis. So this is still proving that Yah, his name is being what? Profaned, not just by the Egyptians, the Mesopotamians, other groups, not just the Egyptians, but also Shemitic groups, which profaned his name. Okay, so look at this name, Yahu, Y-H-U, or Yahoo. Yeah, family. Let me show you what Yahoo means. Let me show you what Yahoo means. Right? From the etymology dictionary online, a brute in human form. So let me drop this link in the chat. Yeah, family, I'm giving you a lot of sources. I'm giving you source after source after source. I'm not one of those that do a lot of talking without giving you sources. I'm giving you a lot of sources to go off of, right? So Yahoo, it means a brute in human form. A made name probably meant to suggest disgust. And that's from the Century Dictionary. But it says a person lacking cultivation. Let me say that again. A person lacking cultivation. So they're saying that this name Yahoo means a person lacking cultivation. But we know Yah created all these things. He planted the garden for Adam. That's cultivation. And Adam had to what? Take on the responsibilities. Continue to cultivate and promote the atmosphere of growth. But Yahoo means to suggest disgust. Now doesn't that sound similar to Yahuwah? And we're going to touch on this shortly, family. But I want to show you the examples of profaning Yah's name. And I'm going to tell you, I shared this with some of our brothers and sisters. And they insisted that they are going to hold on to what they want to believe. Even when I gave them this truth, they asked me a question. I remember I was at a conference, got asked the question. I said, do you really want to know? They say, yeah, because we know that your reputation is you do a lot of study with the Hebrew. I said, okay. I took them. I said, show me the etymological dictionary of the word Yahoo. They went there. Then when I started explaining it to them, they said they still was going to hold on to what they feel comfortable with because it sounds more natural with the breath. Okay, all right, you entitled to do what you want to do. But I'm just showing you when you say Yahoo, a person lacking cultivation, a brute in human form. Let's go to Exodus chapter 10 and 10. Let's go here. Right? And he said it to them, let Yahuwah be so with you as I will let you go, and your little ones look to it, for evil is before you. This is Pharaoh, right? When Moses asked him to allow them to go and honor the feast, allow them to go up into the woods, into the desert to honor the Most High. Pharaoh said, look, I'm not letting them go. And if you see here, you'll see that the feast in a nutshell, you'll see the word Shabbat here. So the Israelites wanted to go into the woods to honor the Shabbat right here. And Moses said, will we go with our young and with our old, with our sons and with our daughters, with our flocks and with our herds? Will we go? We must hold a feast. And in the scriptures, you will see the word Shabbat here in the ancient text unto Yahuwah. We must hold a Shabbat. So even before they left Egypt, before the Passover, the very first Passover, Israel was trying to honor the Shabbat. They was trying to honor a feast day. And I can prove to you that it was the Feast of Tabernacles. Abraham honored the Feast of Tabernacles. You see, family, we have so many nuggets before us. For those that say that, hey, we have to be in our own native territories, that's not correct, because I'm just proving to you that that's not correct. So the very next verse, notice how Pharaoh responded to him, Moses, under the giving the request to Pharaoh under the instructions of the Most High. It says, and he, right, Pharaoh said it to them, let Yahuwah be so with you as I will let you go and your little ones. Look to it, for evil, Ra'ah, is before you. Nagad, Panaya, Kam. All right, let's break this down here. Pharaoh knew the literal name of the Most High because he's saying it right here. And he said, let Yahuwah. Pharaoh knew the literal name of the Most High. But see, Pharaoh, because among the Egyptian culture, the pharaohs are viewed as a god among the people. That's why they build these big giant, what was nothing more than, if you want to call it, it's nothing more than grave sites. But they built these big giant pyramids and all that, which in Greek, all they were doing was building, they are called sacred mountains, because they were trying to mimic the place where the Most High dwelled. So Pharaoh, who refers to himself as a deity, a god, or should we say Allah and Allahayim. So Pharaoh knew, excuse me, the misspelling here, put N-E-W, should be K-N-E-W. Pharaoh knew the literal name of the Most High of Israel, but Pharaoh did not worship Yahuwah. He made it clear he's not worshiping Yahuwah. So according to Egyptian tradition, the right eye represented the sun. And so it is called the Eye of Ra, while the left represented the moon and was known as the Eye of Horus. So Pharaoh denied the request of the Israelites to worship Yahuwah, but he also stated that Ra is before you. So that's what that phrase that I read, what it means is Pharaoh saying Ra is before you. So in the results of him declaring that, hey, you know what? Forget Yahuwah. He said, I'm before you. My deity is before you. He said, Ra is before you. Ra'ah in ancient Hebrew is the pronunciation of the word. Ra'ah is before you. In other words, Yahuwah used the plagues of locusts, which blotted out the midday sun, the darkness from the sandstorms, and the death of the firstborn to blot out the eye of the land, which is called the Eye of Ra. So he put a contact lens on his deity, actually put a patch over his so-called eye. All right. So what is the name of the Most High? We're getting there, family. We're getting there. What is the name of the Most High? What is the name of the Most High? Let's go to Exodus chapter 15. And family, make a note. Let me clear my throat. All right. What is the name of the Most High? Then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto Yahuwah, and spake, saying, I will sing unto Yahuwah, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horses and riders hath he thrown into the sea. Now, some people will take Proverbs out of context and saying that we're not supposed to be celebrating the demise of our enemies. But truthfully, they really don't understand what enemies mean in ancient Hebrew, because that word is a poor transliteration. Actually, it means brothers and sisters that are in the opposite tribe as you. That's what Christ said when he said, love your neighbors and pray for your enemies. Actually, love your family that's in your immediate tribe and love your family that's in the opposite tribes of you. That's what it really means. But here in Exodus 15, we see Moses and Miriam. This is the very first Psalms. Moses and Miriam are responsible for the very first Psalms, and they are singing celebrations of the demise of the Egyptians. Come on, family. Come on, family. Can't get around it. Can't get around it. So notice this here. Then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto Yahweh, and spake, saying, I will sing unto Yahweh, for he had triumphed gloriously. The horse and rider had he thrown into the sea. Verse 2, Yahweh is my strength. Doesn't it sound familiar? This is like the theme of many of the songs and Psalms. David wrote 75, 76 of those books of Psalms. Yahweh is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. He is my Allah, and I will prepare him an habitation, my father's Allahai, and I will exalt him. But here's the kicker, right? When you get to verse 3, I didn't put it here, but let me go back here. Let me see if I could go back here. Let me go to verse 3. It says, Yahweh is a man of war. Yahweh is his name, because you see Lord, that's not in the ancient text. You'll see the YHWH, which is the proper pronunciation of the Most High's name, Yahweh. Yahweh is his name. His name is not Lord. His name is not God. His name is Yahweh. And indirectly, without us knowing, because most of us was ignorant to this. So the Most High said we're not supposed to invoke other gods. I mean, let's say other deities. I don't want to say other gods. He said other deities. But then when you use that term God, I just proved, even from a Shemitic perspective, points to a goddess called Fortune. And in the Germanic language, in the Romans, they had a goddess Fortune. In the Norse, all of that points to other deities. All right, so I want to share that with you. Yah is his name. I will prepare him an habitation, my father's Allahai. Now let's see what Allahai is, because that was in the text where you saw fathers. When we go to here, this is a comprehensive etymological dictionary of the Hebrew language for readers, the Ernest Klein. And what you see here, and I'll zoom in a little bit, right? Notice what we see here, Elohi. In the ancient, it's Allahai, but Elohi. Right? And this is the same pronunciation right here, but it's spelled differently. So when you see this Va, right, this is called a colon Va. So this is becoming a vowel letter, so it would make the O sound. Right? Let me play this short clip for you, so that way you could to bring back the video talking about the O sound, because in ancient Hebrew, there was no O sounds. So let you hear this again as we continue with this here.
Here's a chart that summarizes vowel class and length. And you can see across the top the three classes, A, E, and U. And then down the side, the four lengths, long, medium, short, and very short. So let's just go over this chart. We'll start with the A class vowels. The long vowel is cholam vav, and you'll recall that this says O as in snow. Now you might wonder why an O vowel is in the A class, and this is because of historical considerations. Originally there was no O sound in Hebrew. Everything that is
Life is like a hurricane here in Duckburg. Race cars, lasers, aeroplanes. It's a duck blur.
So as I just shared with you, family, there was no O sounds in ancient Hebrew. And as we progress, I'm going to show you that there was no U sounds in ancient Hebrew. And I'm going to give you sources. I'm going to give you sources. All right. So notice what it says here. Elohi, right? Or Elohi, colon va, vowel letter. This is where you're getting into what is called the matrix lectionis. Then these dots is the Nakud system or the Masoretic points. But it says here, godlike, divine, Eloha. Notice what it says, Eloha. All right. So, and again, this is what transliterates to the word God. And we see here, Elohim, Elohim, which is actually in ancient Hebrew is Allah Hayam. Right? And I'm giving you proof here, family, but let me progress here. I want to make sure you understand exactly where I'm going at with here. So let's go to Allah, right? Because notice here, let's go. Oh, I went back here. Let me close this out, right? Oops, row one. Right? So let's go to Allah. And this is tiny. I can't tell if this is a patak or whatever, but anyway, I can't tell because of the way that it's shrunk down. But this looks like a patak, so this would be Allah ya. But we'll break it down here. We'll break it down here. So the Hebrew definition of Allah. Let's see what it says here. Allah. Notice here, Allah. You see Allah here. Allah. It says deity. Okay, Allah, deity. Denominated from Elah. Right? And it's dealing with Arabic, but still. Allah. We see Allah, but we see Allah here. We see Allah. Oh, wait a minute. We see Allah, which also from Ilah, but we see Allah. Uh-oh, family. See, 2 or 3 witnesses, because how do we get Because you're not pronouncing the ancient letter La. In the Israeli is Aleph, which is silent. You're actually pronouncing the marks of man. So let's go to the Aramaic definition of Allah. Notice what we see here. Yes, family, let me drop this source here because I believe in sharing sources because I know we got some brothers and sisters here tonight. You guys are on it tonight. And I know you guys will go back and research this. I'm going to drop some sources here. I'm going to drop this source that I read for us, the Ernest and Klein. I'm going to drop that here. All right, let me drop that here. This is an etymological dictionary here. All right, but let me drop the source that I just mentioned to you, the English Dictionary of Contemporary Ancient and Babylonian Assyrian Dictionary. Let me drop that here. All right, so notice what it says on your screen. Right, let me just zoom this in. You know how I do it. So it says Allah Aramaic, right? Allah Aramaic. It transliterates to the word God. That we see that it's not a biblical word. And it points to something else, but that's a whole nother story. We already covered that. Then when we see Allah or Allah as well in Arabic. So these are 2 languages that says Allah or Allah. We still see the ah sound. But when did we get El as in Ugaritic? Phoenician. Where did we get that from? El. And Phoenician did not have the sound there. Ugaritic was not cracked until like 1934. So where did they get these Elohim from? The mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses is for that thing to be established. Deuteronomy chapter 17 talks about 2 witnesses, 2 or 3 witnesses. Deuteronomy 19 says 2 or 3 witnesses. So family, I'm giving you 2 or 3 witnesses. I'm following the principle. I'm giving you multiple sources. So we see 2 languages, key languages, Shemitic languages that says Allah and Allah. Doesn't say or El. Elohim. So Hebrew is a masculine language. I just want to give you a little nugget here, family. You have what is called masculine and feminine plurals, right? So masculine plural is always used when speaking to men. For example, this is the masculine plural, yam in the ancient Hebrew, im in the Israeli language. But yam is what we focus on because this is ancient Hebrew. Feminine plural is used when speaking to women, right? Wath or ot. Wath or ot. Wath in ancient Hebrew. So let me give you an example real quick. This is the ancient Hebrew word for sapar, which means book. So we see sapar. So if I'm dealing with men, right, and I put that masculine plural at the end, it'd be sapar yam. Or a mixed crowd, I would use the masculine plural. But if I'm speaking to the women, and it's primarily women, I would use the feminine plural, which is wath, which this would be sapar wath. That's what it means of masculine and feminine plurals. A little different than English. You could just add the S or ES or IES at the end to end of a word to make it plurals. It's different with ancient Hebrew. All right. So alaha is masculine, and adding the masculine plural yam is pronounced alaha yam. Oh, come on, family. I'm giving you top-notch teachings tonight. I'm giving you top-notch teaching tonight, family. Let me say that again. I'm giving you top-notch teaching tonight. And I encourage you guys to go back over this lesson. So the proper pronunciation of God per se in the ancient Hebrew is not Elohim. It's Allah Hayam. And I just proved it. So when we go to Exodus chapter 15, verse 3, right? As I just highlighted, but Yahuwah is a man of war, right? Yahuwah is his name, Sham, right? War, we see Malak Ma or Malak Kama. If we pronounce every letter as a syllable, it could be Malak Ma or Malak Kama. Ancient Hebrew, right? Pronounce every word, every letter as a syllable. But not getting into all of that right now. So Yahuwah is his name. All right. So Yahuwah is a man of war. Yahuwah is his name. All right. So as you see on your screen, this is the ancient, this is the Syriac block letters, Yahuwah. So how do we pronounce his name? Right? How do we pronounce his name? Is his name pronounced Yahweh? No. Is his name pronounced Yahuwah? And I'm not trying to insult anyone. I'm going to answer these questions. Is his name pronounced Yahweh? Is his name pronounced Yahweh? See, there were no vowel letters in ancient Hebrew. Let me say that again. There were no vowel letters in ancient Hebrew. I want to introduce you to this word interpolation, because the Romans, the Greeks, everybody modified our language. Everybody did everything they could to distort our heritage, starting with the language. So when you see that word interpolation, or if you hear that word interpolation, I'm going to explain to you what it means. So in Hebrew, or this Israeli language, they have two systems there, a vowel systems, the Nikud and the Matrices Lectionis. The Nikud is the vowel points, the dots. The Nikud and Naquad in ancient Hebrew means Brandon. So not only did this beast, Brandon, our ancestors, which Revelations talks about and prophesies about, but they also branded our language. Now, when we say Matrices Lectionis, that's vowel letters. All right. So the Oxford Dictionary definition of interpolation, this is what it means. Insert, in other words, something of a different nature into something else. And notice the example they give here. Illustrations were interpolated in the text. But look at the sub entry, which is lining up to what I'm going to go into next. Insert, in other words, words in a book or other text, especially in order to give a false impression as to its date. So when we look at that word Lord or God, those are interpolations. Those are interpolations. And I can show you some other interpolations, but I'm not going to go into it right now. So the Nakud or the Masoretic points, let's deal with it. I want to turn to a source here. And guys, I'm giving you some great sources. This is the Theosophical Glossary from Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, 1892, page 208. Excuse me for butchering her name. Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, that's her name, but Theosophical Glossary, page 208. Look at what it says here. It talks about the Masoretic points. It says here, the rabbins, in other words, rabbis who bruised themselves with the Masorah, hence called Masoretes, were also the inventors of the Masoretic points. And they weren't even Israelites. They're not Israelites. It's a fact, which are supposed to give the vowelless words of the scriptures their true pronunciation. See, many will say that Wah is a W because of the misunderstanding of that letter and the English language. So all the scholars agree that there was no vowels included in the ancient language. So how is it that our brothers and sisters are getting uwa or ooh from that one letter, the wa or wah? And I'm not saying this to disrespect anyone, but I'm just asking a simple question, because now you're making that letter into a vowel. Now you're doing what is called, using it as a vowel letter called the matrix lectionis, and that's completely incorrect. So it says here, scriptures, right, their true pronunciation by the addition of points representing vowels to the consonants. This was the invention of the learned and cunning rabbins of the school of Tiberias in the 9th century of our era. 9th century. That's the Middle Ages. This is not the Antiquities. This is what they would call the Middle Ages or the Middle Age proper. Because prior to the 9th century, the Dark Ages, which is supposed to be the first half of the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, the Moors ruled Spain or the Iberian Peninsula. So the 9th century, that's not old, family, who by doing so had put an entirely new construction on the chief words, key words of the names in the book of the Bible. So again, this was the invention of the learned and cunning rabbins of the school of Tiberias in the 9th century of our era. And again, they added new word constructions on key words. Key words. And it goes on to say of Moses, and made thereby confusion still more confounded. The truth is that this scheme has only added additional blinds to those already existing in the Pentateuch and other works. In other words, those, many were, still trying to put this thing together, because the confusion is, are we under the law or are we not under the law? That's the confusion that was being taught and still being taught today. All right. So the ancient Hebrews and the Hebrews, the ancient Hebrews and the Hebrews spoken by the Messiah did not have vowel points. They did not have, they were added to the Hebrew text. This Hebrew, so-called Hebrew that's being spoken today is not what the Messiah spoke in the biblical times. So let me give you another source, proof of the interpolations of the vowel letters in the text of the Hebrew by Charles William Wald, 1857. Right? Let's see what he says here. But the case is widely different with regards to the further disclosure made in the following essay namely that the Hebrew Bible, as it issued from the pens of its inspired authors, was written without vowel signs of any kind. Let me say that again. It says was written without vowel signs of any kinds, whether points or letters. So it's saying it wasn't written with vowel points, those dots, the nikud, and it was written without vowel letters. So anyone that try to say that Y makes a W a vowel sound, that's actually a vowel letter, they are completely incorrect. And I have other sources, and I'm bringing it out tonight because we'll be here for another couple of hours, but I'm not going to do that. All right. But I'm showing you, I'm giving you old sources, 1857. Was written without vowel signs of any kind, whether points or letters, that were Halef, Yod, Wa, are now to be seen in the pointed text. So this is saying key letters like Aleph or Alap, the Yad, which they call the Yod now, the Wa, which they call the Va, says are now to be seen in the pointed text. In other words, they're using these as vowel letters. And this is because of the Greeks. Useless and in the unpointed, one diverted from their primary improper use. In other words, they are being used out of context. It says of the same general nature as that of all the elements of the Hebrew alphabet. So all the letters were supposed to be pronounced, not any silent letters. You have the ayin that's silent. And you have, as they pointed out, the aleph in the Israeli language, which is the alap, being used as a vowel letter. The wa, which they call it the va, is being used as a vowel letter. Right? The yad being used as a vowel letter. So to the occasional service of denoting vowels, they were constituted no part of the original writing, but were interpolated. Remember, inserting something of a different nature to form something else. Let me say that again. Insert something of a different nature into something else. So these vowel letters were not part of the original writing. These vowel points, which is called the nikud, was not part of the original Hebrew. So again, when people say that Y is supposed to be a doubled U, they're saying that it's supposed to be a double U, a double vowel. And this is how they get Yahu or Yahuwah. And again, I'm not trying to throw any shade on anyone, but if that's what you choose to use, that's between you and the Father. That's your preference. I'm not knocking anyone because we all are still what? Figuring this thing out. The Most High know that we've been served a bad can of goods or bag of goods. He knows that we are in a situation where our entire heritage was turned upside down, part of the plight of the crafty counsel in the 83rd book of Psalms, to make it so that way our reputation is no more in remembrance. Our reputation of having our language, our reputation of obeying the law, statutes, and commandments, our reputation of truly understanding the will of Yah. All right? Not trying to sound preachy, but I'm just giving you some information here. So they were constituted, they constitute no part of the original writing, but were interpolated and it not long after. All right? So we're going to continue on. It goes on to say here, in the first place, then about 2 centuries after the termination of the Babylonian captivity, and while a considerable number of persons still continue to speak pure Hebrew as their vernacular dialect, Asia was invaded by a people who had introduced into the original alphabet. Who's that people? They're dealing with the Greeks. The vast improvement, but they say it's a vast improvement because ancient Hebrew sound like a baby language to them. A, ba, ga, da, ha, wa, za, ta, cha, la, ma, na, sa. It sounds like a baby language. I didn't put the source here, but I got sources saying that Hebrew sound like a baby language. And these are the sounds that babies make. I challenge you, just what I mentioned here, ah, ba, ga, da, ha. You say that to some newborns, some toddlers, and notice how you will catch their attention. See, when you hear the first sounds that a baby make, the first vowels they make is da, da, ma, ma. They don't say ooh, ooh, moo, me. They start with da, ma, ga. They don't say goo goo ga ga. That's us. So that's why they refer to our language as being a primitive language. In other words, a baby language. So that's why it says the vast improvement of vowel letters. So the Greeks interpolated our language because they had no use for the ion. So they chose to use that as a vowel letter. That's where you get the O from. And actually that the aleph or the alap, that's why it's silent in the Israeli language, because they use that as a vowel letter. And that letter forms the what? The letter A, if you turn it 45 degrees counterclockwise or clockwise, right? So the vast improvement of vowel letters, and the Israelites were in consequence forced, in spite of their prejudices, to learn a species of writings that made them acquainted with the use of such letters. In the second place, their scripture were very soon afterwards translated into the tongue, connected with this writing by the order, as tradition tells us, of a pagan government, and at any rate in a country in which they and their religion were peculiarly hated and despised. This rendering the Old Testament into Greek, a language at the time understood throughout the civilized portion of the world. Because as Negroes, we were considered uncivilized. All right, this is just a duplicate. All right, last point I want to make with this. It says here, this conclusion is fully confirmed by the present discovery. For although some Asiatic nations, Negroes, Asiatic nations, Negroes, Asiatic nations, I'm saying my Trump voice, nations making use of syllabary may have been induced by observation of Grecian practice. We're dealing with the Greeks. Voluntarily to change them into alphabets of a superior order through the introduction of the irregular species of vowel letters, technically called the matrices lectionis. So they're saying irregular species of vowels because these things were foreign to the ancient language. Introduced the irregular species of vowel letters, technically called matrices lectionis. Yet the Israelites, who were peculiarly averse to holding any communication with pagans, cannot be supposed to have adopted this improvement till they were compelled, in other words, forced to learn and accepted the benefit of it by being subjected to the dominion of the Greeks. But all the extant coins exhibit either Y or Yod or both of these letters, employed as vowel signs. And therefore, each must have been stamped subsequently to the period when they came under the yoke of that people. So he's saying these vowel letters came from the Greeks. Come on, family. So they introduced the irregular species of vowel letters, technically called the matrices lectionis. So when we look at the maps of the Merriam-Webster dictionary definition of irregular, this is what it says: not being or acting in accord with laws, rules, or established customs. So that wasn't part of our laws. That was not part of our rules. That was not part of our established customs. Going back to the source here, I know I'm going into the source a lot, proof and interpolations, but notice what it says here, right? We already knocked down the matrices lectionis, but now they're getting ready to deal with the Masoretic points, which is called the Nikud. But it would be going much too far in praise of the Masoretic system of vowels to assert that it has completely preserved the ancient pronunciation of Hebrew, or kept it exactly the same as it was from the very outset. On the contrary, external evidence, which is accessible to us on the subject, serves to show that in the course of a vast number of successive ages, some changes have taken place in this respect, but still, that they are not such as in the least to affect the sense of the scripture. So they're saying, even though they changed these letters, even though they interpolated the language, it doesn't take away from the meaning of the words, the meaning of the scriptures. That's what they are saying here. All right. I know I keep going in here. A lot of pages here, a lot of things I can point out here. But notice what it says. I may here by anticipation add will be found equally to apply to the matres lectionis. Right. So they're saying both the, now they're saying what we just covered with the Nakud or the Masoretic points. It's saying likewise with the matres lectionis, or likewise with the Masoretic points, after it shall have been proved that those letters do not any more than the points. So Masoretic matres lectionis, those vowel letters, as well as those points, constitute part of the Hebrew scriptures as originally written. So they know that this is not the original. They know it's not the original. They know it's not the original, family. They know. But I'm not going to stop there, family. I'm going to give you so much to be full for this week, because I'm not going to do another live until the weekend. So you have plenty of lessons. This is like the fifth lesson in the row, fifth night in the row. So I'm giving you 5 straight nights of detailed, in-depth studies. And if you choose to continue to go the path that you choose to go do with the language and all that, that's on you. I'm not going to be mad at you. I'm just giving you sources. I'm giving you academic sources, highly academic sources. So let me give you another point. Still dealing with the name Yahuwah. There were no Germanic diphthongs such as the UA sound, UA sounds in ancient Hebrew. Now I got to prove this. This is coming from biblicalhebrew.org. Matres lectionis. Let me copy this into the chat, and you guys could go and you can read up on this source here. I'm getting close. I know I'm covering a lot, but I'm giving you a lot to go off of this week. It may take you a few weeks to go through all of this. All right. We're almost at the end of this. We got about 20 more slides. All right. But I want to make sure I give you more than enough information. All right. You see that here, family. There's the link. You can confirm everything that I'm saying. This is biblicalhebrew.org, the matres lectionis. It says here, the usage of certain consonants to indicate a vowel in the spelling of Hebrew, Aramaic, and Syriac languages is called matres lectionis. So this is telling you all these languages got infiltrated and related to Greek. That's what this is saying here. That is exactly what this is saying here. The epiphenomenal association between consonant letters and vowels was then seized upon, and the use in words without historic diphthongs. Let me make this clear. It says the epiphenomenal association between consonant letters and vowel sounds was then seized upon and used in words without historic diphthongs. The system was developed as an early system for indicating vowels using the Hebrew alphabet. So let's hone in on this here. Words without historic diphthongs. But before I show you those words without historic diphthongs, what is a diphthong? Right? Some of you guys probably saying, hey, what is a diphthong? Well, let me show you what a diphthong is. A diphthong is a sound made by combining two vowels, specifically when it starts as one vowel sound and goes into another, like oi, right? Sounding oil. And you see the two vowels, oi, like the oi and oil. Diphthong comes from the Greek word diphthongos, which means having two sounds. So when you say Yahuwah or Ruach or Yeshua, that is of Greek influence. That is an interpolation. That is a Greek diphthong. All right. I'm just showing you here, family. As you see here, diphthong comes from the Greek word diphthongos, which means having two sounds. So let's go to the Germanic diphthongs. Let me deal with that real quick. Right? Diphthongs are combinations of two vowels in one syllable. This table lists the Germanic diphthongs and shows you how to pronounce them. Oh, look at some of the Germanic diphthongs, because these are not ancient Hebrew sounds. Many of these sounds, like the AU sound, like ow as in loud, oi as in boy, E as in see. Come on, A as in, or I as in cry. But also A as in, as you see, bay earn, or Bay, or as you see here, Bayern, Bavaria. So there was no E sounds, family. There was no oo sounds, family. There was no oi sounds, family, in ancient Hebrew. So you have Greek influences, you have Germanic influences. Now we're getting into what? Yiddish. So here's some words without historic diphthongs. Yahuwah, Yeshua, Ruach. Now, is his name pronounced Yahweh? Is his name pronounced Yahweh? There were no vowel A sounds in ancient Hebrew. Remember, let me go back to that Germanic influence where it comes from. Let me go back here. I'm giving you nothing but sources. Let's go to the Germanic diphthongs. Notice what you see here. Right? You see this A sound as we see Bayern. We see the influence of the Germans. All right, so let's go back here. Let's go back here. Let's go back here. There were no A sounds in ancient Hebrew. There was no O or U sounds in ancient Hebrew. So let's go to another source. I'm giving you a lot of sources, family. Let's go to another source. This is the American Journal of Philology, the Semitic vowel ah, 1881. Now I'm going to tell you, family, this source right here shuts it all down. Make me want to sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Shuts it all down now. We just shuts it all down. I'll be back. You know, make me want to sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but it shuts it down. Let's see what this source says about these sounds. Let me show you how it further proves what I just pointed out. Right? But notice up here, even though I don't have this portion of the lesson here because I truncated it to make sure that we get all what we need to get in here. But notice here it says most of the simple participles or particles, right, rather, have as in ba, ka as in la, well, as in ba, ka, la, wa, fa, sa, al, la, kad, right? When you see AU, it's still supposed to make the sound. LAU is supposed to say la. The KAI sound, kai. Right? The is still ah. And while it says here, while the has thus maintained itself in so large a number of cases, it has suffered frequent phonetic diminution and increase, mainly by the influence of the accent. So this is telling you how they changed the languages. It's telling you the original sound of the ah. It even goes further, telling you that the proper sound for, instead of the yod, is the yad. I didn't put all of that in here. I'll do the full teaching of this on Patreon. Right? And so when you see here, we're going to deal with this A and S sound. We're going to deal with these here. Right? The Eastern Babylonian Assyrian dialects seem to offer no example of this change. So they're telling you, even in the ancient Babylonian and Assyrian languages, didn't have these sounds. So how did they get there? How did they get there? Right? And I know some of you guys trying to figure out, what are these sound symbols over these letters? Those are called umlauts. So what is an umlaut? Let me give you an illustration here. Right? Basic German pronouncing these umlauts here. German has 3 extra vowels, and these are these umlauts here. And this is from dummies.com, languages. And let me put the link in here. I know I'm giving you guys a lot of links. I know I'm giving you guys a lot of links. You guys cannot say I did not give you sources. I'm giving you plenty of sources, right? Let me give you the one on the Germanic diphthongs. All right. Now let me give you this link here. We're about to wrap it up, family. We're rolling. Because this presentation is even longer, but I just took it down some so that way I can, at least give you something to get started with. Let me drop this inside here. All right. All right. Now, so umlauts slightly alter the sound of the vowels. You see A, O, and U as outlined in this table. These sounds have no equivalent in English. So these are some of the sounds that is telling you some additional umlauts that's further altering the sounds. Like those 2 dots can be long, it can be short, right? Like A as in say, or as in bet, or right? Or as we see there, oo as in door, right? So this is giving you some examples. My Jersey accent came out a little bit door, right? Some of you guys that's from the New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts area, I know what I'm talking about. Instead of saying door. Instead of saying car. Instead of saying water. You know what I'm talking about, water. Anyway, that's my accent. I tried to hold my accent in, but it came out. But anyway, the umlaut looks a lot like the Nakud vowel sign, which is called the Saray and the Saray Yod. Let me show you. This is the umlaut with the 2 dots over, and it can make the same sound as these 2 dots, part of the matrice lectionis. This 2 dots right here is the Saray, and with the 2 dots in the yad or yod, it's the Saray Yod. It makes the same sound, but instead of having these 2 dots on the top, Hebrew has their vowels underneath. Well, Israeli language has their vowels underneath the letters. So is the similarity of the marks and sounds a coincidence? No. Where did the U and vowel originate? Let me break this down real quick. Let's go back to this source. On page 452, American Journal of Philology, the Semitic vowel ah, 1881, page 452. Notice what it says. According to a very common tendency in language, the ah suffers a further shortening into several more or less indistinct sounds, which are rarely marked with precision in any Semitic graphic system. Thus, in the modern Arabic of Syria and the modern Syriac of Urmi, the often has the sound of English and but. Now, this is, you guys remember this, the short sounds of your vowels, A, E, I, O, U, which is the long sounds. So it's saying often has the sound of the English as in but. The missionaries in Urmi write the first vowel of the names Bunyan and London with the sign which in classic Syriac would be pronounced pure See how they're interpolating? Whence it is to be inferred that original has sometimes become as in but, instead of with this may be compared the disposition in some English speaking persons to substitute sound for all English vowels, that is, to facilitate pronunciation by bringing the sound as far to the front as possible. In Urmi, this modification occurs more commonly in connection with the throat consonants, though it is not confined to these limits and shows disposition to extend itself. Similar to this is the change of the remember the as a not. In Urmi and Tigrina, as the Urmi, the first vowel of English doctor, right? In Tigrina, Gaber or for Gaber for Gaber. And this last Praetorius, and this is just getting more into details, it says, see an example of vowel harmonization, the change of into or right? They changed this vowel, being introduced by the presence of a preceding of following O or U, right? In Tigrina, the sometimes also passes into the U, right? The and full, or and full, or into as in not, under the influence of a following labial or labile. So the last thing I want to point out here, right? This is the last thing. I thought I had it. I thought I extended this, but I didn't. Unfortunately, I didn't, but it's okay. It's all right. We'll just wrap up with this. The last thing I want to point out, I thought I put more into here. Let me make sure. Yeah, I didn't put it here because I did extend it. I put more into it, but it's all good. Well, let me close out with this final point. Ancient Hebrew, Phonology, Cornell University, by Gary A. Rensburg. And this is going to completely shut down what many think they are teaching today. This so-called biblical Hebrew is nothing more than the Israeli language and still have Yiddish as its foundation. So page 79, Cornell University, Ancient Hebrew Phonology. And, this source here is a lot of information you can pull out of here. But notice what it says here. Notice what it says here. The question remains as to how accurately the reading tradition of the biblical text in the Masoretic transcription there reflects ancient Hebrew. That is to say, the Masoretic text, that is the traditional text of the Bible, dates to circa 850 CE. That's the 9th century. And reflects the manner in which biblical Hebrew was pronounced at that time. This is not ancient Hebrew. So these people that many of you guys are spending all kinds of money, they're not teaching you ancient Hebrew. Even if they use the letters, they still giving you their so-called biblical Hebrew is still the Israeli language, was pronounced at that time. But how traditional an example, how ancient was the reading tradition of the readers for the centuries before circa 850 Common Era CE? In other words, does the Masoretic text reflect Hebrew as it was pronounced 500 years earlier, 1,000 years earlier, even 1,500 years earlier? In some cases, we can answer this question, but no definitive conclusion can be reached. It says in some cases, in other words, some words, but not all words. That's what it's basically saying. But let's see what else it says. It says, nevertheless, we will base ourselves on the assumption. Whoa, wait a minute. So all what we hearing today, what people they charging you all this money to study a language that's not even ancient, that is based off of assumptions. Nevertheless, we will base ourselves on the assumption that the readers of the first millennium Common Era were extremely conservative in their biblical reading tradition, and that the Masoretic text more or less accurately reflects the pronunciation, or at least one. Right? So this is saying in a nutshell that it's all based off of assumptions. It's all based off of assumptions. I didn't put the rest of it in. I should have had it all up in here, but I cut the lesson down so you could see. So they telling you this, that in a nutshell, basically what they did, they made an assumption. They tried to put an assumption of, since this is the 9th century, the assumption is, okay, the 500 year rule, that we're going to assume if it's the 9th century, well, let's subtract 500 years off the 9th century. Let's go back to about the 4th century, 5th century, and we're going to assume that these are the sounds that they were making, and this is the Hebrew that they were speaking at that time. So family, let me add 2 more slides here. I got to put this in. Initially, I wasn't, but let me put this in here. Let me close out with this final point here. Let me close out with this final point, because I got more I can show. I have more I can show, but I'm not going to do it because it's a lot. But let me show you one last thing I want to point out. One last thing I want to point out. I'm going to put 2 things here, actually. I want to put, because when I say I did my homework, family, this is years of studying. Got more sources that I can even deal with that name Yahweh, but I don't want to deal with it here because that's just a lot more. But let me just put 2 additional things here. Where is that? I just had it. Bear with me 1 second, family. I want to read one source here. Some of you guys that have been part of the Hebrew classes, y'all going to recognize this. Yeah, let me put it right here. I see 2 of them. All right, let me see here. I'm going to put these 2 over. Let me add these 2 slides, and we're about to wrap this up. Right? Actually, let me add it this way. Let me take it out. Let me do it again. All right. Let me add one more thing here. For those, I want to put a bonus nugget here, because I know some people want to say, oh, Yahuwah shy. That's why I say, hey, if you want to say whatever you choose to say, I can substantiate with proof that Yahuwah shy is the ancient pronunciation. But of course, because it doesn't sound like what everyone is now running with, and these educators that have called themselves teaching, right? They know the lies that they're teaching, because I'm going to prove it to you. I'm going to give you another source when they're making it clear that they are actually lying. These educators are lying, family. So let me give you one last source to prove that, and then we're going to wrap it up. This is coming from Language Revival and Multiple Causation, the Mosaic Genesis of the Israeli Language, Oxford University Press, forthcoming. Now, notice what you say here, because remember what I said, that this so-called modern Hebrew, or it's supposed to be, it's supposed to be called modern Hebrew. That's what they want to call it. But actually, it's titled the Israeli language. And this is why I call it the Israeli language, because many of the professors called it the Israeli language, right? So let me put this here. This is the source. You can Google and you can save this for your records, right? But notice what this says. Notice what this says. For more than 1,700 years thereafter, Hebrew was comatose, either a sleeping beauty or walking dead. It served as a liturgical and literary language, and occasionally also a lingua franca for Jews of the diaspora, but not as a mother tongue. The formation of Israeli, notice what it says, the formation of Israeli, the name I use for so-called modern Hebrew. So they even calling it a so-called modern Hebrew, but he says Israeli was facilitated, and it says at the end of the 19th century. So now this Hebrew, so-called Hebrew, this is the doing of someone by the name of Eliezer ben Yehuda, because he pulled from all kinds of Shemitic languages, and also still pulling on the Masoretic from the 9th century, as I proved, that has no correlation with the ancient pronunciations. It says at the end of the 19th century, Eliezer ben Yehuda, this is like 1855 when he did this, school teachers and others to further the Zionist cause. So this language that you hear is all about political, to further the Zionist cause. Earlier during the Haskalah, in other words, Enlightenment period of the 1770s and 1880s, writers such as Mendele Molker Safarim, right, says produce works in neologism, which eventually contributed to Israeli. However, it was not until the beginning of the 20th century that the language was first spoken as a result of distinctive characteristics, such as the lack of a continuous chain of native speakers from Hebrew to Israeli. Israeli presents the linguist with a unique laboratory, in other words, a playing field that they can experiment whatever they wanted. It says, in which to test a wider set of theoretical problems concerning language genesis and evolution. Indeed, the genetic classification of Israeli has preoccupied linguists. The genetic, in other words, genetic comes from the word, we see the word general, Catholic, genetic, right? All the way goes down to gene. The genetic classification of Israeli has preoccupied linguists from the beginning of the 20th century, which is the 1900s. The still prevalent traditional views suggest that Israeli is Semitic. It says traditional views suggest, they're saying Israeli is not a Shemitic language, but he's saying it's Hebrew, Semitic language. That traditional views suggest that Israel is Semitic. In other words, Hebrew revived. Educators, scholars, politicians have contributed to this assumption in their efforts to impose a nationalist narrative on linguistic reality. Revisionists counter that it is actually Indo-European Yiddish, relexified, that is Yiddish with Hebrew vocabulary. Come on, family. Come on, family. This is linguists that is confirming what I just pointed out. I'm not making this up. They are making it clear. What you hear today, this is not ancient Hebrew. This is not Hebrew at all. It's not Hebrew at all. Israeli is a hybrid language, both Semitic, Indo-European, and Indo-European. I argue that both Hebrew and Yiddish act equally as its primary contributors, accompanied by a plethora of other contributors such as Polish, Russian, German, Judeo-Spanish, in other words, Ladino, Arabic, English, and etc. You'll see Ladino, right? You'll see Solitreo on some of the pews in Atlanta, Georgia, not Atlanta, Savannah, Georgia, that our ancestors built. This assembly that was founded in 1773. My uncle, great uncle, pastored there, one of the pillars there. But anyway, who made sure those pews was in the location that is in right now. So thus the term Israeli is far more appropriate than Israeli Hebrew, let alone modern Hebrew or Hebrew to count. So he's saying in a nutshell, do not call this so-called modern Hebrew. No, it's not Hebrew at all. It is an Israel, call it Israeli language. That's what they're saying here. Right? That's what they're saying here. And it says here, Yiddish survives beneath Israeli phonology, syntax, lexis, and even morphology, although traditional and institutional linguists have been reluctant to admit it. See, they know it. That's why they're saying traditional and institutional linguists have been reluctant to admit this. So they all are in on the lie, family. And that's what this is showing here. So let me show you Ge'ez real quick. This is a language that up into the 4th century had no vowels as we know of today, right? It was the 4th century when they decided to modify the language for the Europeans. But this is how it was pronounced prior to the 4th century. Notice how it's going to sound, because Ge'ez, or which they call it actually Ga'az, they call it now Ge'ez or Ge'ez. Notice how it's pronounced in the ancient. A, ba, ga, da, za, ta, ya, ka, la, ma, sa, a, ka, ra, wa, za, ha, na, sa, ta, fa. Confirming, and like I said, 2 or 3 witnesses, family. That's how I roll. 2 or 3 witnesses. And notice here, James Adair, he said this in his book, History of the American Indians. And this is dealing with Georgia. And I'm working on Road to Savannah, the final episode. I'll have it finished. My goal is to have it done in another month. I'm going to have some of this in there because he was basing it upon the Indians per se, the natives that he come across in the 17th, 18th century down in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, as far as up as North Carolina. Said that, hey, these people have Hebrew customs, even the language, right? Even the language. Notice what he says here. Before I conclude this argument, I must here observe that when the Indians meet at night to gladden and unite their hearts before Yahuwah, instead of Yahuwah, they say Yahuwah. They sing Yahuwah Shu, Yahuwah Shu, Yahuwah She, Yahuwah She, Yahuwah Shai, Yahuwah Shai. Come on now, Yahuwah Shai. Come on, family. Come on, family. Notice here, it goes on to say, but they commonly make those words end with one syllable of the divine name, Yahuwah. Remember, vowel letters, these vowels didn't exist at that time. But we know the evolution of the language, right? We know by the time they made it over here, the language had already been interpolated by the Greeks. They were here before Christopher Columbus came here. But notice what it says, Yahuwah. I know I say Yahuwah, which is the proper ancient pronunciation. It says, if we connect this with the former part of the subject and consider they are commonly anointed all over in the time of their religious songs and circling dance. I think that's what it's supposed to say. Dances. The words seem to glance at the Hebrew original. So this tell you, family, it wasn't Yahweh. They weren't saying Yahweh. They were saying Yohewah at the time. It wasn't Yahweh, Yahweh. But if you take it a step further back to the ancient, it would be Yahweh. I just thought I'd throw a little extra in here as we wrap it up. So there you have it, family. There you have it. There you have it, family. And I'll drop that link here, or drop this source, name of this source. I gave you a lot of sources tonight, family. A lot to go on for the rest of the week, because I am not doing another live for the rest of the week. And also, I'm going to enjoy the company of my wife, because this is our anniversary. All right, this is our wedding anniversary, 21 years of marriage. So I'm going to spend time with my wife. I'm not doing any more lives for the rest of the week. I may not even do it this weekend because of my anniversary. All right. But I wanted to take the time out, close this series out. And I encourage you guys to go back over this lesson, because I gave you so much. I gave you so much here. I gave you so much information. Gave you so much information. Gave you so much information. All right. I appreciate you guys for the love and support. I am not dropping the chat on the link, because I do not want to prolong this lesson here. But I just want to give you more than enough information for you guys to go back over. And I hope I gave you clarity on the names. You know, again, this is not trying to knock any community, any groups that's using certain names, but I just wanted to give you proper understanding here. All right. Proper understanding. Again, some of our brothers and sisters, unfortunately, they still want to hold on to whatever they want to hold on to. They still want to hold on to whatever pronunciations they want to hold on to, and whatever justifications that they use to justify it. You know, some got intimidated trying to, because of many trying to mock, saying, oh, you saying Yahuwah. Oh, you saying Yahweh Shai. Oh, no. And they try to poke fun at us for saying this. But I can guarantee they can't debunk any of these sources that I shared. I shared a lot of sources that I could guarantee you most of them don't even know about, who's mocking and making fun. So again, that's why I say, hey, you know what? You know, if you want to continue on what you choose to do, but you know what? Don't, in a nutshell, you know, don't mock those that are using this pronunciation versus saying Yahweh versus Yahuwah. Those that are saying Yahweh Shai versus Yahusha or Yeshua. Don't knock us. You know, for me, it's not a deal breaker, because again, the Most High know, and he's going to clean up this language. He's going to clean up this language. He already made it clear. He's going to clean up this language. All right. So in a nutshell, you know, I hope you guys are dancing like this.
Life is like a hurricane here in Duckburg. Race cars, lasers, aeroplanes. It's a duck blur.
And with that being said, family, in the words of the Most High that he had given to Moses, he said to Israel in Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 and 14, he said, fear ye not, stand still, see the salvation of Yahuwah. These Egyptians that you see here today, you will never have to deal with them again. Said the Most High will fight for you. But here's the kicker. You must hold your peace. Harash, which means be quiet. Can't go back, can't stay here, keep moving forward. Shalom.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14 verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was black. Abraham, born in the city of a black man, called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was the... Jacob had 12 sons, for real, and these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel.